Hello and a very warm welcome indeed to this latest edition of Talking Germany, the show where we do just that. Now, it might not always seem so, but I think it is a fact that the church or churches are very important institutions in life and society here in Germany. And my guest today is a woman who is important in the church, and that woman is Ellen Ueberschär. Thank you very much for coming to Berlin and joining us here today.
Thank you.
Great pleasure to have you here. Now, Ellen Ueberschär is not just a theologian, she is also the Secretary General of the Assembly of Germany's Lutheran Protestant Church that takes place every 2 years. And that's where we're going to begin, Ellen Ueberschär, because it's a very, very big event. You're responsible for it, a mega event. We call it here in Germany the Kirchentag, the Church Assembly. What's it all about?
Yeah, we don't translate that word Kirchentag because it's so special. And it's not quite right to say it's only Lutherans, because from its beginning it was meant ecumenical. Yeah. And in the beginning, after the Second World War, even the Protestants were divided, and they couldn't take part together in the Eucharist, which is now
because of the
possible.
East-West division between Germany.
And the ecumenical thinking has always been a big part about it, about Kirchentag, and it started after Second World War because some lay persons said we have to have our own forum to think about how does faith affect our political life, how we are coping with these challenges and with ideological challenges, and so they started up this forum, which was in the beginning more pious than it's now, and then it developed up to political event in the 80s in the West. Yeah. It also took place in the East in smaller forums, but these were also political events to fight for more justice in these Eastern.
I'm fascinated to hear you talking so much about politics, to mentioning the word already in our discussion, to mentioning the word ideology. That gives us an awful lot to talk about. We'll have to talk a lot more about the mood, the atmosphere at the Kirchentag. I'd like to go back though to the beginning of the programme, and I think you'll have been listening very carefully to my introduction, in which I said that when people ask me about life in Germany, I always say one thing people need to understand is the central role of the church, of the churches. Very important, I always say. Am I right to say that?
Hopefully.
But tell me more about that, because it is important.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yes, I think because we have a relationship between state and church which is closer than, let's say, in France.
Absolutely.
So we have a laicistic society, and also in Britain, which is very secular, more secularized society. And in Germany, many people belong to one of the big churches, and the church is asked if there are politics have to deal with ethical problems or something like that, and the parliament, for instance, if after the summer break, it starts with a service.
There you are. So the church in Germany has a central role, and it has an institutional role. Yeah. And just one thing before, because you mentioned the word ecumenical, I think it's interesting because when we talk about the church or the churches in Germany, the traditional churches, there's a real danger of shutting out Jews or Muslims or people of other faith, of focusing too much on the churches, perhaps.
I don't think so, because it's a process of learning in all the European societies, and I think we in Germany we really have an advantage because we found a way to integrate religion and not to keep it back and to make it small, but to integrate, because it's for many people who come from abroad here, who immigrate into Germany, for them religion is an important point, and how to live it and not to hide it, also in society. I think we have the advantage that the churches can show these people from other countries how to live your religion openly and peacefully together with others in this society.
Very interesting thoughts, very interesting insights. You've had your first impressions there from Ellen Ueberschär. Here is more. Thank you.
Ellen Ueberschär can sometimes be seen zipping around the streets of the central German city of Fulda on her bike. As Secretary General of Germany's Lutheran Protestant Church Congress, or Kirchentag, she has to organize an event every 2 years attended by more than 100,000 people. That's a massive undertaking. In the garden behind her office, she issues instructions for the upcoming weekend. As a theologian who grew up in the former East Germany, she had to fight for her beliefs from an early age. This bell reminds her of her own history in a once divided Germany. It was cast in 1954 at the last full National Church Congress before Germany was reunified in 1990. Ellen Ueberschär was born in Berlin in 1967. She originally wanted to become a doctor, but when the government refused to allow her to study medicine, she became actively involved in the Protestant Church and ended up studying theology. She's been Secretary General of the German Protestant Kirchentag for the past 8 years, and she's based in Fulda. Although she's a Protestant, living in a predominantly Catholic town doesn't bother her. In fact, her favorite church in Fulda is a Catholic one. She often goes there for a moment of peace and contemplation. But the respite is short. Sometimes she meets her colleagues for a working lunch at a nearby Italian restaurant. From here, it's not far to the train station. She does most of her traveling by train, and today she's headed back to her native Berlin, where she's our guest on Talking Germany. Ellen Ueberschär.
Well, we are in Berlin, and we'll be talking about Berlin very shortly. But let's go back to Fulda, first of all, because I think our viewers will be fascinated by the fact that your church, your Lutheran Protestant Church, has chosen to base an important wing of its activities, an office, the office where you work, in what we just learned is a predominantly Catholic city. What's going on there? What's that all about? Yeah?
It has to do with the after-war times, not only, but because Fulda is right in the middle of Germany, and I'm very much on the road. It's a Senate. I'm very much on the road, or very often on the road between the south or the north and the west. So it's quite good to be right in the...
You're telling me it's convenient, but it sounds to me a little bit more... but people, you know, this is a Catholic city, yeah? And you guys come along. That sounds almost like sort of confrontation, infiltration.
No, as I told you, the beginning was that lay people were convinced to build up their own forum.
Yeah.
And that meant also to be in context with other lay persons from other churches. Okay. So that was quite interesting to be in such a confrontation or something
dialogue.
like that, and to turn it into dialogue. Yeah, that was the beginning.
Let's go. You were born in Berlin, yeah, in
East Berlin.
In East Berlin, yeah, communist East German times. Yeah. Tell me about the relationship between your church and the East German communist state.
It was a difficult relation because the communist dictatorship, they tried to extinguish Christendom, and they tried to extinguish the youth work, especially in the 50s in the beginning, and then they realized that that doesn't work. We were successful because many people left the church, but some stayed. And my parents belonged to these people who stayed, and who had to face disadvantages in terms of not having that profession you want to have, or being always the odd one out.
What about you? I mean, when
experience.
you were a very young girl, I mean, I'm trying to imagine 4, 5, 6 years old. When was the first time you sort of looked around yourself and thought, this is a very restrictive, authoritarian place?
Yeah, it was from the beginning. One really interesting situation was when I had to in the school, and I had to stand up in front of the whole class and had to explain why I didn't take part in an ideological meeting, but went to the church. And I was there, and the teacher really tried to make pressure on me.
And how did you?
And then they were laughing. The class were laughing.
They were
and
laughing.
I was really. Yeah,
this is humiliating.
It was.
It's distressing.
That was the sense, to humiliate me. Yeah. But this turned around when I was a young girl or a teenager. Then my classmates realized she knows more about history and philosophy and religion. What is it all about? Yeah. And then they came and asked me, and so this changed in a way.
You just mentioned professional life. You wanted to go away and study medicine?
Yes, in the beginning I wanted to.
Yeah, and you weren't allowed to, so instead you studied theology. Just tell us about, how does that work? You're not allowed to study what you want to study.
It was, you weren't free because you were in a society where the state was like a guard who said, you go there, you go there, you go there. And the school, I applied for that, for medicine, but the school sent a side message, don't take this girl or so.
I see.
And that was it. And then I said, all right, then perhaps this is a sign to make the hobby for profession and to get theologian. It was a big decision also for my family at that time, because the people who worked for the church really were out of society. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You are a person of faith. Faith is very important to you. How great was your faith in the times you're talking about? Sort of, the beginning of the 1980s, for example. How great was your faith that this communist state around you might one day crumble?
I didn't think about politics and about changing the whole political situation. I mean, it was too big for me when I was a child, so I concentrated on this community and on this feeling. They don't really have the power about me. It's someone else who has power about my life, on my life.
It's interesting.
And that was important.
This year we are, of course, marking the 25th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall in November, the 9th of November. Let's just have a look at some pictures. I mean, these are pictures that we've seen so often, but they're inspiring every time you see them. Where were you on that monumental day?
At home.
At home? Doing what?
Sleeping. Because I had to go to the university the next morning.
I've been in this situation very often, that I've spoken to people who grew up in the former East Germany. Some people more or less critical of the former East German state. And I'd like to ask you a question I've asked very often. There are lots of people who say they miss something or they miss a lot of things. What do you miss about the former East Germany? I mean, it's after all the country you grew up in.
I don't know what I miss, because it always it was also together. Some say it is the solidarity between amongst the people was higher, but on the other hand, there was the Stasi. Yeah. And we were. Someone was always listening what we are doing. Yeah. So what is it about solidarity? So I don't. It's difficult to say, because all what was for me important and good is still there. My family, the church, and in the community where I grew up, this is still there. So I just developed out of it, and all the other ideological things are away, and I'm quite happy about all that freedom we gained. A
lot of people outside the church, I know, when they look at those images we've just been looking at, would say, it's Woodstock for Christians.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. Beside the fact that it's also a political event, we try to pick up the discussions we have in the society and try to.
But you're using your hands like this as though there's a lot of friction and tension. But it's certainly that report.
No,
it was all it's love, peace, and harmony.
It's quite boring to make a film about a panel or so or a speech. So that's why we in this film, I think these pictures of happening and feeling that Christian community were chosen. This is all. It's a mixture of a civil rights movement event, of a spiritual event, and the political event. It's all together.
And it's lay people. That's an important point, isn't it? It's not the church hierarchy who have said we're having our Woodstock. It's lay people getting together.
It's not to compare with World Youth Day of the Catholic Church or so, where the priests and the Pope is in the middle. In the middle are these lay persons who have quite normal jobs and young people who are doing their school or studies.
It's often described as an oasis. If it is an oasis, that suggests to me that people have a sort of a deep yearning to get away from something. What is it they want to get away from?
It's more that they, like a petrol station or so, they try to take energy and to go on with this energy.
To recharge their spiritual batteries.
Perhaps that, something about, something like that. I think that's right.
Who finances it all?
It's a mixture of state funding, church funding, state funding as well, because it's important for so many people.
This institutional role of the church
together,
again,
and of church funding, and of course the people who come pay a fee.
You've been the Secretary General of the Assembly since 2006. How did you get the job?
I was asked.
Okay, you were asked. Yeah. What made what makes you, or what made you the right person for the job?
I became a call, and I think it was that. What's fun for me in my job is to be on that edge between society and church. To bring together in society, I'm the church person, and in the church, I'm not really in the church, but because I work for Kirchentag, which is more connected to society than other things in the church. And what is important about the Kirchentag, I want to say, is that we have at least 5,000 people from all over the world, and sometimes up to 8,000. So it's quite a big congress also. It's not only a German event, but it's also an international event.
I'm still a little bit worried about, on the one hand, peace, love and harmony, which we saw in the report, and then on the other hand, you sort of doing this with your hand, as though there's a lot of friction, a lot of tension, and a lot of sort of relevant stuff happening. I mean, do people argue with each other? Is there conflict? Is there dissent, or is it all people strumming guitars and saying we're all on the same sort of line here?
For instance, I expect for our next event, 2015 in Stuttgart, I expect discussions about the peace politics, because we have a big discussion in Germany about bringing weapons to conflict areas. We didn't do that before, and the influence of the church and that the experience of Second World War said no weapons from Germany to any conflict regions. And now politics are changing, and I expect discussions, for instance, about that.
Important discussions. Yeah. Okay. So there is a strong political element. Talking of politics, talking of Woodstock, a lot of young people, come to your event. I'm just a little bit older than you, and I grew up with much more of a feel that sort of young people, teenagers, they rebel. Your lot don't seem to be rebelling at all. They're still strumming the guitars. Isn't it important that sort of the youngsters at some stage say no?
Yeah, I think it has. It really changed because our generation always thinks of being young as being a rebel, and so. But as I see young people nowadays, is that they are more seeking for orientation and for people who are authentically and who can say, I think this is right. And so, whoever says this is right, so they are looking.
That's interesting. In a world where everything is relative, somebody is saying something is right.
It's another generation. They grow up in another surrounding politically.
Well, just a question about you, because we're talking about generations here. When you were a youngster, when you were like 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old, did you rebel?
Yes, I did.
How?
Yeah, against the parents and family that I disliked some things my parents do, which is quite normal. And in politics, for that situation in the communist dictatorship or in the situation, I was cautious. I was not to go forward. I have a friend who was in prison because she openly demonstrated. I didn't do that, but to be.
Do you regret not doing that?
No, I don't regret, because I always tried to find a balance between. I wanted to get educated. I wanted to do my Abitur. But on the other hand, I wanted
graduation,
to show,
your high school graduation,
to do the A level, and on the other hand, I wanted to say that I dislike what's going on in this society, and that was a balance. And the church was like a school of freedom for me, where we could openly speak, and that was the place where I was living. And
Ellen Ueberschär, why are so many people turning their backs on the churches and specifically on your church?
I mean, more people leave the church because they die than leave the church because they dislike anything about it. I mean, in Germany we have that system of tax paying. And people.
Let's stop there, because I think for our international viewers we need to explain that.
Yeah.
You're the right person to do that, I think. Yeah.
The tax,
the church tax.
The church tax. It's only a system of funding the church that originally the state was in favor of that system and recommended it to the churches, and the state said, okay, we can collect the money from the people for you, and then we give the money to you. So, and this is how it works. And
what percentage? You pay the church tax, I'm sure.
I pay it. It's 8 or 9% of the tax you pay for your wage, the wage tax.
Okay.
And
it's not an insignificant sum of money. Yeah.
No, but you get half of it. You get back when you make your the tax system.
It was important, though, to explain that, I think, for our foreign viewers, because that really is one of the cornerstones of how Germany, how the church is institutionalized in Germany. So you were going to say, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
But it's for the state, it's a cheap system, and for the church, of course, it's reliable funding, and this enables churches also to run hospitals, to run some social work and so on, and of course to run the churches and all that stuff.
And people until recently used to say that they were one of the main reasons for leaving the church was because they didn't want to pay church tax.
They didn't want to pay the church tax.
But that has it's changing now. There are other reasons coming sort of more into the I mean, people, according to the surveys that I've been reading, people are saying they no longer find meaning in the church. They can no longer identify with the church, and they don't want to pay church tax.
I mean, it depends. It's also because Germany is developing more and more as a multi-religious country, and people from other backgrounds, cultural and religious backgrounds, come here. And of course, there is the question: is that really my home? Where is my home? What I also see is that people seeing these religious people coming from abroad start to ask again, where's my origin? Where's my background? Am I baptized? Why was that? Or so. That's also part of it. It's very shiny and different in many parts. So, of course, the church is getting smaller in Germany in terms of how many taxpayers do we have?
Yeah. I mean, the latest figures that I have that I wrote down is 2012, that the Protestant Church in that year lost 140,000 members. And the Catholic Church, despite the fact that the Catholic Church has really been rocked by grave global scandal. Your church hasn't, but more people, 140,000 have left your church compared to 120,000 in the Catholic Church. How do you account for that?
It's a lack of education, as I really have to admit, because they leave the Protestant Church because of the things that happen in the Catholic Church. That means we really have to stay together. If there happens a scandal or they are doing something bad, so we are affected. So we are really bound together in positive and negative.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if you're affected in another way, because you've talked about the link between the church and politics, political commitment, engagement in society, and certainly one figure in recent times, in the last year and a little bit more, is Pope Francis. He stands, the head of the Catholic Church. He stands as an inspiring figure in the battle against injustice and for the impoverished of the world. Yeah. You see it like that?
Yes, of course. This is the positive side of ecumenical thinking or ecumenical life. That if there is a pope who speaks for a church of poverty and to appreciate the poor and to concentrate, to focus on them, of course we are affected as well.
And do you not think that, do you start thinking, my word, we need credible leaders, spiritual leaders?
I think the difference between the Catholic Church and the Protestant is that in Protestantism, all the lay people are important. It's not only one person. It don't depends on one person. And I think we have credible persons within our churches and the special thing about Protestantism is to bring together faith and thinking, and that's a special mixture that is very
just one quick question. I really want to know the proper answer. What do you say to people who say, I do not need religion in my life?
I say perhaps it is, as you say, but perhaps you try to find something which is, despite of that, important for you about religion. Because I think that religion is something every person needs, not every day, but perhaps in these changing situations, when someone dies, when someone gets born, or when you're getting really seriously ill or so. I don't want to say that that's the moment we get you, but I think we have answers for these situations over hundreds and hundreds of years collected, and why should these answers be not important for a person? I think the person at least has to know these answers.
The Martin Luther University of Halle-Wittenberg. Young students studying, possibly to become pastors in your church. Would you recommend to a young person to become a pastor in your church?
Yes, of course I would.
Oh, of course you would.
We need qualified persons.
Well, I'm sure you do, but it's a tough life.
Yes, it is.
That's what we've just learned.
The church is getting smaller, but it will be there in 20 years or 50 years, and we do need credible persons, and I hope they develop and make their education.
Do you understand? I thought one of the things that was most interesting in that report was one of the young people saying, yes, I can see myself as a caring, healing, giving Christian, but being somebody who stands up there and delivers a sermon, who is a preacher, that's a totally different thing.
This will develop, but because when they grow up, and when they come into that situation, it's also a shelter to have that talar, is it?
Yeah,
talar
the gown.
And you're there not as, I don't know, Andrew Miller, you are there as a pastor
in a role.
And that's important to change the attitude and to cope with it personally.
But still, I mean, the challenge is to be a role model for your community.
Yeah.
And that's increasingly difficult in the modern world, where we know how difficult it is to lead a life, and we talk about it all the time.
It's not. I think it's important to be a credible person and to show how do I connect faith and everyday life with my family, and how difficult it is, and also to connect faith with doubts about faith. That is, I think that's the role of pastors. And being a person where you can come and talk about the difficulties of your life.
Would you have been a good pastor?
Hopefully. So.
It seems to me you would, yeah? But you've chosen a different path. You have preached.
Yes, I do. I do it regularly, and that's really.
Does that come naturally
I like it
to you?
very
You
much
like it,
because I was really yearning for my ordination, becoming an ordained pastor, and being allowed with it, because these were when I started my studies in theology. I wanted to become a pastor and not to manage the Kirchentag or so, but to be in a parish and to be there for other people and to preach the gospel. And then it developed as it did, and after science and theology at the university and so on and on, I came to that point of my ordination. And it was very important for my life.
Talking of your life, I don't want to sort of pry into your life, but I'm very curious, because I know what I do first of all in the morning. I know what my sort of priorities are in the morning. I'm a journalist, so the first thing I do in the morning is read the newspapers, more or less, and all the other media, of course,
I don't.
Well, what do you do? Here's a personal question. Do you pray first, or do you read the newspapers first?
No, I read the Bible first. Not every day, but nearly. I have a small book with a Bible, not the Bible itself, but there are chosen Bible verses, and it's called Herrnhuter Losungen. I think that's, there are similar books in other languages as well.
Okay.
And there's always one saying for this day, and sometimes it's really good. It fits perfectly in your situation.
We're running out of time, but I really want to ask you, because this is what I was building up to, and I really this is important. We live in a very difficult time, very complex time. There's lots of terrible things happening in the world. Lots of people, when you look at how they live, they're living in sheer hell. A person like you, what do you when you see all that happening? How do you explain the fact that that is allowed to happen?
I think of Christ, and of that the God we believe in is a God that is with these people. It's a God who died on the cross, who has become itself a victim of these
You don't sometimes fear that people have been abandoned?
Yes, but what were the last words of Jesus on the cross? Why did you abandon me? So it's this point of crying, and feeling there is no God is a part of Christendom.
So ultimately for you, I mean, normally at the end of the show, we do a sort of a Talking Germany quiz with either or questions. And I suppose I'm just going to give you one, which is hope or despair?
It's hope, of course.
It has to be. We have to live in hope, that's your lot this time round on Talking Germany. Ellen Ueberschär has been telling us about the world from the perspective of Germany's Protestant Church. Fascinating insights. If you've enjoyed her company as much as I have, then do come back next week. Until then, bye-bye and tschüss.